Virtual reality is rather strange in that it can make games that at first appearances would appear to be very dull, outdated and old-fashioned absolutely incredible. And Compound is no exception to this. On the face of it, and in 2D, whilst you're watching this on YouTube, you probably think, this looks like some really weird naff Wolfenstein game. And you know what? In some ways, you would be right. But let's rephrase it and capture what it actually is. A Wolfenstein-like first-person shooter where you actually feel as if you are inside of the game. And that's the key thing. When you load into this, you genuinely feel as if you are inside of the game. Now, you think that's the general objective of VR games, but unfortunately, despite the amazing headset technology we have, there's lots of VR games where they really just don't make you feel as if you're actually in the game. And it's a combination of developers maybe not considering the resolution limitations of headsets, not using sound properly, or not having intuitive and easy to use controls. Well, the Compound developers clearly understand what makes VR tick. And this is just an alpha demo that anyone can download and play for free. I found myself playing this for a couple of hours this weekend. I expected it. You install these VR demos and VR games, and mostly they're not necessarily that exciting, but this one just totally caught me off guard and blew me away. Now, at the moment, the demo features 3 difficulty levels, all of which are actually pretty hard until you get the basics of how to play the game, at which point easy and medium are fairly doable, but difficult is very much old school Nintendo hard difficult, and I've not managed to beat that yet. But the demo just consists of sort of 15 or so rooms that you can walk around with enemies that spawn in different locations. Because the end goal of this game is that it will be a roguelike first-person shooter with the general style and theme that you might associate with those retro first-person shooters. As I say, it very much has a feel of Wolfenstein to it. Already though, and crucially, what's apparent from the demo is just the basic mechanics and attention to detail for what are generally speaking for first-person shooters, simple things. Obviously in VR these aren't simple things because developers tend to struggle to get them right. A perfect example would be how the submachine gun works, which you can see on the screen right now. With this gun, the player can decide when to reload the gun at the expense of then losing the bullets that are currently on the gun. And you can at all times see how many bullets you've got on the gun because they're conveniently placed on top, like a P90. The effect that this has is that it builds tension because you don't know if you're going to open the door and be confronted by a room full of people and robots, where a full clip will make things a lot easier without the hassle of having to reload the weapon. Now, of course, you can go into a room more slowly and peek around the corner more gingerly, so it's up to you if you just want to charge in. But the point is, you have this choice and a tension building mechanic that just comes from how the weapon is executed in the game. And I think it's a good example of how really subtle things in VR can make a really large difference, and these sort of things are really magnified by VR. I don't think you could actually have this type of gun mechanic in the same way in a non-VR game and have it be as satisfying or work quite so well. You'll also notice with this submachine gun type weapon, when you first put the clip on top of the gun, you have to push a button as an extra step to remove the clip casing, kind of like a back to front M1 Garand from World War II and Vietnam era weaponry. It would seem like a pointless step to put into the reload process of a gun, but the combination of the sound effect and seeing the clip casing fly off the weapon as you reload it, it's just satisfying and makes the weapon feel far more solid, more tangible, and again just adds to the crunchy feel of this game. Rather nicely, you will have noticed we're sliding around like a ginormous snail because the game includes artificial locomotion as an option. Now, the way it works in this game is very similar to Onwards, though you use the grip button to actually initiate the movement, and where you point your controller is the direction you'll go in. This type of movement isn't the most responsive when it comes to going from forwards to backwards, but I find it works really well when it comes to moving left and right or generally navigating around this space. Unfortunately, for those of you that are triggered by artificial locomotion in terms of motion sickness, the game does also have teleportation, and there's no cooldown timer. You just touch the left pad and point where you want to go, and you'll instantly move around. And what this achieves is that the developers again leverage the power of what virtual reality offers with the head tracking and positional tracking, in that because it's slower paced, you tend to approach things more methodically and use cover properly, well, as you would in a real world firefight, hopefully, if you're not wanting to get shot too easily. But that works well with VR. With 90s first-person shooters, because you have very limited control over your avatar inside of the game, the focus was often on really fast strafing, how you move around the environment on a larger scale, and how you navigate yourself around AI to manipulate the AI positioning and cluster them up to then use weapons more effectively. And, you know, that made perfect sense for 90s shooters in 2D, where moving around at 130 miles per hour is fine. It's really enjoyable. It makes perfect sense. It's really good mechanics for that type of game. But that doesn't work well in VR. And what does work well in VR are sort of more macro, smaller scale movements that put a focus on using cover, accurate aim, and just your raw sort of centimetre precision that you have over your in-game avatar. And again, this game, from its design and the way the movement speed is handled, really does focus on that and really does help make it more immersive, and really just capitalizes on what VR can offer that a keyboard and mouse and 2D game don't offer at all. Lastly, of the most noticeable things that really stand out with this, just the lack of UI nonsense. You literally start off inside of the game, you either drink or eat the difficulty that you want to do. Obviously, how else would you pick your difficulty in virtual reality? It makes perfect sense. But it's just really seamless, really comfortable, and you're in the game. As soon as you put the headset on, as soon as you load this up, you are in the game. There's nothing to take you out of it, and it's all very cohesive and coherent within its own aesthetic that the designer of this game has gone for. Now, in terms of the actual weapons, as we say, you can see how much ammo you've got in your current clip because it's on top of the weapon, or with the actual pulse pistol you see is using there, you've got a little meter on the back of the gun itself that shows if the weapon's overheating. You can actually initiate the cooldown by pushing the button before it overheats. You can see how many clips you've got in your backpack, in storage if you will, by just looking at your left hand. And your left hand also has the map and your current location. So again, you can just at a glance work out exactly where you are and what you want to be doing. Basically, nothing gets in the way of the core aspect of sneaking through corridors and shooting the enemies in this. And I think it is a risk with some VR titles that, because you've got the freedom, or developers have the freedom to do more complex ways of handling weapon storage and items and accessing maps, sometimes I think they just go a bit too far rather than just keeping it simple and to the point. And Compound is about as simple and as clear as you can get when it comes to the UI and items in the game. Absolutely fantastic and just enjoyable to play. So I think that pretty much covers why Compound is essentially, at this point in time, a masterclass in fundamental VR shooter games design. I am, to put it mildly, really excited to see what happens with this in the future, how the developer expands on what they've already established. I think it'd be really nice if there's different types of enemies, or more enemies, maybe specific boss enemies, and I'll be really excited to see what other weapons they include in the final version of the game, because if they're any bit as satisfying as the two weapons we've got already, it's going to be really fun to play. So at the moment you can play this on the Oculus Rift and the HTC Vive, though it's not designed for front-facing VR, so you'll either need to set up your two Oculus cameras either side of you, or ideally have three Oculus cameras so you can play this in 360. I don't think it uses the D-pad either yet for movement, but the developer is looking to put that in if you have an Oculus, because I think with the Oculus Rift it'd make more sense to use the analog stick to move around. Personally, I prefer that, but with the Vive, because the touchpads are awful for actually accurately moving yourself around, unless you are one of those weird people that likes that, the way it works in the moment is really good for the Vive. But look out for it, download it, link in the description. If you haven't yet, make sure you click the subscribe button. It makes you 5% more sexy and more prone to drinking lots of tea, which is only a good thing. But until the next one, Thanks for watching Virtual Reality on Gamer Muscle YouTube channel. Goodbye, everybody.